What's
Mara.
up, everyone, and welcome back to the Trainman Report. This is the eighth
Hey,
episode of the show. It is the first one in this brand new year that we are all a part of. 2024 is here. So congratulations to everyone for making it with us through last year and all that. Looking forward to the next one personally. So happy New Year's. The Trainman Report is live on more platforms now. So if you want to watch this on YouTube, you can. It's also available on Twitch, and it's on all your favorite podcast networks except for Apple yet, because we need a better thumbnail image to get on Apple. But it's on Spotify and a bunch of the other ones right now. So this episode will be available for listening on all your favorite podcasting platforms in the near future after. On that note, my name is Holden Stephan Roy. We have the Trainman himself, Alex Montagano, here, and a very special guest, former NDG Mayor Sue Montgomery, or is it Mayoress? I don't know what the correct term is, but Sue Montgomery is with us, and that's a really cool thing. Thank you so much for coming through and sharing your time with us. So welcome to the Trainman Report. I hope you've had a good holiday period so far.
I did. I was up north, not enough snow, but relaxing.
yes. So, Merry Christmas, everybody. As you can see, I'm sporting my wild caught Christmas tree, and I can't tell you how excited I am to have Sue Montgomery join us today. Sue Montgomery, an accomplished journalist. I'm just giving a quick rundown of this. I was like going online and reading up on you, and there's a lot to be said. You're a feminist, and very important, obviously, in this day and age. A mother. How many children do you have?
Two. Well,
Two.
they're not exactly children. They're 25 and
Yes.
7. Yeah.
Yes. You were the borough mayor of CDNDG. I like to call you a fighter for a good cause. You were involved in the Gazette as a reporter for the Justice File, if I remember correctly.
Right.
And you were heavily involved with Unitarian Church as well.
I wouldn't say heavily involved, but I did. I used to chair like their Empty Bowls fundraiser. Unfortunately, I had to stop going there because I've been stalked by one of the people that likes to protest outside of that church. So
a troubled soul. Yes.
Very troubled.
Yeah. So, I'm just, I guess I put together kind of an agenda, and I guess, we had Mauro Pena, sorry, apologize, Mauro. And we asked him, like in kind of the superhero tradition, what is your origin story, right? So from what I can see, you were born in Barrie, Ontario in 1960. Brampton. Okay. And
one of the
Alex.
Not Barrie, Brampton.
I apologize.
How could you get those confused at all?
Yeah, and not Brantford, which
Alrighty.
is Wayne Gretzky is from.
Right.
So.
And I read somewhere there was like even a shooting in your high school or
it
something.
was the first school shooting, I think, in North America, was in Brampton, Ontario, which put us on the map. I was in grade 9. It was 1975, May 28th, 1975, a day I will never forget. So that was sort of that was an experience in my life that changed me forever, I think. You grow up in a small town and you think that everything is safe and good, and the scariest thing about that whole thing was that the guy who did it was in grade 11. His name was Michael Slobodian, and I actually had a crush on him. So that was kind of a first in a string of bad choices of men. But he didn't know that I had that crush, right? Like I was in grade 9, he was in grade 11. So you didn't voice those things in those days. So anyway, it's probably good that I didn't go out with him.
That is an interesting sentiment. You didn't voice those things. This is the opposite of the TikTok era where you're like
totally
on blast telling everyone.
No. And I liked him because he had this long hair and he was sort of this loner, of course, and carried around a guitar case. So I thought, oh, cool, he plays guitar and really romantic. But little did I know he brought his guns to school in the guitar case. So, and then fast forward many years later, when I was working at a women's prison in Brampton, I was working with his mom. So he didn't survive. He killed himself in the shooting, but his mom went to work for the corrections, I think, as a way to sort of heal herself. So some of these stories come full circle.
Right.
So you're in Brampton.
I know.
and then how does that origin story find its road to Montreal?
Okay, but people like to diss Brampton. It's not what it
I'm
is.
not dissing Brampton.
No, I'll be
It's
honest.
just-
I definitely do diss Brampton, especially
Yeah,
in
I do
hip-hop,
now. I do
because,
now.
like,
But it was an
it's-
awesome place to grow up. Like there was,
I'm sure.
it was back in the day. There was farmland between us and Toronto. It was a very different. It was the suburbs, but it was just like I had a good group of friends, and unlike most people, I really loved high school. I had a great upbringing there, so it was a good place to grow up. But then, of course, it was too small for me, so I looked on a map, like where's the furthest place I can go to get away from here and go to university. So I went to UBC. And didn't know what I was going to study. I just kind of bounced around there, a bit lost. And I had a teacher who was German, or a professor who was German, who told me, you don't belong here. Go to Europe. Like, just get out of here. And I said, but where? And she said, well, go study in Germany. And I said, well, I don't speak German. She said, doesn't matter.
There's a clear bias there.
Yeah, I think so. So I ended up in Germany, and I was only going for 6 months, but ended up staying for 2 years, learned German fluently, ended up being a very useless language to have learned, but still enjoyed it. And I was there during the peace movement in the 80s when Germany was fighting against the Americans placing their Pershing missiles in Western Germany, because at the time there was West and East. And so I became very politically involved. And the other experience there was that I had never heard, I am embarrassed to say this, but I had never heard of the Holocaust. We had never been taught that in Brampton. We learned about the explorers, Christopher Columbus, but there were no Jewish people in Brampton. The first Jews I met was when I went to university. So I learned firsthand about the Holocaust in Germany, and I was blown away by it, and shocked and horrified, and devoured everything that I could about it, like books, and went to plays and movies, because the Germans are very open about it, and wanting to make sure it never happens again and to educate the population. So it was a very good experience, actually. Then I finished my degree at UBC and ended up working at the women's prison. And from there, I decided I wanted to be a journalist, because I found I wasn't very good as a prison guard. I kept telling all the prisoners that I bruise easily and please don't hurt me. But they were lovely women who just really had bad breaks in life. I would say 9% of them had been sexually abused. So I spent most of my time listening to them and asking them questions about their lives and wanting to write about it. So I ended up going into journalism from there, and then worked at the Toronto Star, and then decided I wanted to live in Montreal because it's very European, and wanted to live in another language. So I bugged the Gazette for months until they finally got sick of me and hired me. So that's how I ended up here in 1986, when all the other Anglophones were leaving. So
the year I graduated high school.
I wasn't alive yet.
I hate people like you.
I was only born in 87, so it came like right after.
This is it's a great mix. I got a millennial, Xer, and I believe you're a boomer. So, but
Alex, you're not supposed to say that so directly.
Yeah, 60s, I think it's cut off, I think. But question for you though, where did you actually complete your studies in journalism? Was it U of T?
No, I did 1 year at Carleton. They used to, after being in prison, I went to Carleton for 1 year in Ottawa, and it was a great place to study because it's so boring. So there's nothing else to do but focus on your studies. And luckily they had a 1 year course. So that's
awesome. Awesome. That's a good origin story. I like that. That's a good origin story.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, in preparing for this interview, one of the things that have been popping up for the last year and a half, 2 years, it just it keeps on showing up on people's radar. Call it the political radar or the community radar, is the Empress Theater, right?
Mhm.
Now, I wanted to start with that with you because you have a story there to share with the community, and there's been quite a few posts on Thrive and on
somebody quite literally asked about it specifically to you, to wanted to talk about it today. I forgot
exactly
who it was who put that comment, but we do read all your comments.
I do have a vision, remembering you with obviously the representatives from Project Montreal making some announcement, and there was some sort of public consultation related to the Empress Theater, and we haven't heard boo lately. It's like completely fallen off the map. So maybe you could give us sort of like a backdrop of where we are right now, and if it's not going anywhere, but at least give us the history from your perspective on the Empress.
Well, it goes back to like the 80s. I think there was a fire there. So anyway, it belongs to the borough, and it's been sitting empty, and like everyone can see, falling apart. And there was often squatters in there, which was very dangerous for them. So they keep boarding it up. And so I actually put it in my platform that I would do something about the Empress once and for all. And so I worked closely with Magda Popiano, who knew a lot about and was on the executive, so had a bit of pull downtown. And she worked with people downtown. I can't remember even which department it was. And so anyway, we decided that we wanted to get something going on it, and downtown was enthusiastic, but they said they needed an audit of the building to start with, to decide whether it could be fixed or had to be torn down. I mean, we all knew it had to be torn down. I did a tour inside of it, and there's nothing left of it. Like, it's disgusting.
Right.
So, but we needed the official piece of paper from the experts saying it had to come down. So I asked the senior bureaucrats at the borough to get this audit, and they claimed that it was being done. And lo and behold, it was never done. So that was one of the, the start of, okay, a bald-faced lie to me that things were being done when they weren't. And then I asked for consultations to be done, and the people that were hired to do these consultations were architects. Like, they weren't consultants. Like, they weren't people who hold consultations. And I kept asking why these people in particular, like, what was their profession, like, what was their experience? That wasn't forthcoming. So I have my suspicions that it was a friend hired, for $250,000 to do these consultations. Again, I have no proof of this, but it just odd.
Right.
And a lot of information.
So just to be clear about what you're stating there, or not stating as fact, but alleging may have happened based on your understanding, is that what they needed to do was hire some regular people that would not have cost as much money, probably, to go audit the building and just say this needs to be condemned / dealt with / whatever the follow-up
there were two
would be.
things. There was the audit that hadn't been assigned ever, and the person who I spoke to about that alleged that someone else had been assigned it and didn't do his job. But the person I spoke to was, ultimately in charge. And the second thing was, we wanted to hold consultations with the public to find out, like, what do people want there? Come forth with your ideas. So anyway, we had these useless people holding the consultations. They were very nice, but one problem was they didn't speak any English. And of course, I wanted it held in both languages because our population is,
No, I
large
just witnessed what you're describing. They did a public consultation recently on the Terrebonne bike path, upon which some French dudes spoke in French the entire time. And then they were like, we'll hold all your questions till the end because then it'll be bilingual. And then they gave the general population a lot of attitude for asking questions that were answered in this French report, which irked me, for lack of a better term, because it was like a violation of the social contract they made for this meeting with the public. So it's maybe not the best to have consultants that can't actually communicate directly with the public, or at least have somebody on the consultant team that speaks English. Like, that should just be like if you guys are getting a $250,000, put a little bit into some English.
Yeah.
I have to add in here right now is that under the current Bill 96 law, there's no obligation for any civil servant in the borough of Côte-des-Neiges and EG to provide us services in English.
Well, there never has been, because we're not
bilingual.
We're just French, and the civil servants are entirely, like, even the directors, they're unilingual francophones. And I got a bit of attitude sometimes, like my father was forced to speak French and I will speak French, like, and I spoke French all the time, like, for better, for worse for them. But, there was times I didn't know the vocabulary, like it was a brand new, like there's a lot of acronyms. And so anyways, that's a whole other story.
Yeah, but I gotta support you and say that CDNDG is an Anglophone community, and this is not about the struggles that the French Canadians or the French Quebecers had to endure to secure their political kind of like place within the federation or within the province. This is about providing frontline services and servicing a local population, and the local population is what it is. Well, and
the other thing I insisted on, and is in my correspondence, to have that we're on unceded land here.
Right.
They don't like that either. They refuse to put that on any kind of correspondence.
Right.
As we know, they don't like to acknowledge the
I mean, that part is at least pretty standard now.
Francophones are the oppressed. They couldn't possibly be the oppressors.
Right. I've also witnessed that as well. I remember
so that's a whole other show.
Let's not delve into that too much, but
especially because for that point they're currently saying it. So given that they're currently saying it, even if they refused to in the past, they are currently doing it. So it's kind of like beating a horse of a battle that's been won. That one particular conversational point. However, to me, it's baffling that they couldn't find a person that speaks English. There's people that speak English in every profession in this province.
Yeah. We have these consultations, and they're terrible. And we have to do it on Zoom because we're now into COVID. Right. And so a lot of people came. I have to congratulate the public, because a lot of people came with amazing ideas and drawings and examples and things they wanted to put forward. And, the consultations didn't go well at all, because these guys, it wasn't their expertise and they didn't speak English. And so then they wouldn't take any questions. There was no way to ask questions on this Zoom. It was the beginning of Zoom, so people still weren't very comfortable with it. So it was a bit of a disaster. So my chief of staff and I decided, we have to scratch this. We have to do it over again, and we'll just get people from inside the borough to do it. We don't have to spend money, more money. We'll just get people that are in, urban design or whatever. So we did that, and I sat in on it, and any kind of translation. No, actually, the guy that did it was able to speak some English, so that was much better. But again, it had to come from me. So I was constantly faced with people not doing their jobs, constantly, and being frustrated about it, and people telling me that they had done things when they hadn't done things, or taken care of things when they hadn't taken care of things. And it was just and
this is just because, like, Sometimes the people who know things are a little jargony. The civil servants are the non-elected people that work for the city, right? So you have somebody like Sue who gets elected in, and somebody like Alex who tried to get elected in. And I'm having fun, Alex. Don't worry, we're gonna get you some clout points.
Please do.
But then these folk get elected into office and in a sense become your representative, so to speak. But I think there's a lot of confusion on the power that people have. Like, I saw some people heckling Peter McQueen in his face, of which that man has a lot of patience, because I don't think you'd want to heckle me to my face the way they were heckling him to his face. And I was like, y'all are actually mad at this guy for things that he's not responsible for / has no power for, because like I was listening to what they were saying and I'm like, y'all sound kind of ridiculous. And so I don't think people actually understand the extent.
I have to say, sometimes Peter McQueen deserves a bit of heckling, because
I do. I think he deserves it. Yeah, I agree with
that. For anything, that man has the
I agree. I agree with Sue on this one.
Yeah.
He'll just
don't know him like that, but
yeah,
fair.
Yeah.
I just saw that heckling.
Like, he just does whatever he can to get elected. He'll say whatever you want, like whatever.
So back on the Empress, though.
Yeah, but to the power thing. So yes, we don't have any power. They have all the power. The bureaucrats, the civil servants. So anyway,
and those people get appointed, right, by other people.
They get hired. They get hired. It's like a huge machine at the city that hires them, and many of them don't even live in our borough. First of all.
Right.
Have no interest in improving the borough, really, because they don't live there. And I found that most of them wanted to do the least amount. Like, don't make my life difficult. Like, don't make me do extra work.
I have to support Sue Montgomery here, because when I go to council and I'm asking questions to council, and I take a look at the table of the civil servants that work for the borough, there's a couple of observations that come to my mind. First of all, they don't represent us. They're not a reflection of our community and the diversity, and also, just the backgrounds that we have. So they're not from us. They don't, and I can tell you with extreme confidence, like the majority, I'd say in the 90%, maybe more, don't live in the borough. And I would say a large portion of them don't even live in the city of Montreal. They're off island. Like, for example, Stéphane Plante does not live in the borough CDNDG. And why is that important?
He doesn't even live on the island.
Yeah. Why is that important? Because when they roll out of bed, excuse my language, they don't have to deal with the shit that we got to deal with on a daily basis, right? It's like in business, we call it skin in the game, right? Like, if you have skin in the game and you're making decisions and you have to bear the impact and the consequences of that, the decisions you make and the way that you react to the consequences are going to be far different than someone who's kind of arm's length from it. And I also will support Sue in her claim that there's a lot of nepotism that goes on. There is a lot of nepotism that goes on in the civil servants. It's like it's kind of a family, and
a boys club. I would say it's a boys club.
I would say it's a boys and girls club now, but it's an exclusive boys and girls club, right? So if you prescribe to some sort of cultural ideal that that Quebec aspires to, right? An extraordinary nation, François Legault called it today, right?
Yeah. Anyway, so what happened with the Empress is nothing.
All that to say is that I just think it's worth highlighting some of these things. I will get back to the Empress, because I don't think people know how things work in general in the general population. So like, people have to be able to empathize that in this position you're really just an advocate. You're there to like push, but you can't actually get people to make decisions. And like, if you've ever worked in a corporation of any kind and your priorities didn't align with whoever sales said was important, you find out right quick that all of a sudden your priorities are not being acted upon with the speed of somewhere else. So let's say the bureaucrats decided that this issue for the Empress wasn't important. Sue could have been out there day and night, and there's very little that could have happened. to do anything different. And that's why I try to just emphasize all that stuff so people have that context as you're describing dealing with the people at the city, because I don't think that part is actually very clear to the general population.
Thanks for
Well, and
pointing out.
I would take it even a step further, that I feel that honestly, I don't even know why we have elected officials. I know we're a so-called democracy, but it's a lot of money to pay people who essentially have no power. And you
So
can't.
I'm sorry, Sue. Please forgive me, but I just want to know where we're at in terms of the Empress, because there was an
Yes,
announcement
okay.
made.
So I'm
Announcement made, right?
We make the announcement, we try to get the audit, we finally get the audit. And of course it says the building has to come down, and we do the consultations, and we sort of come to the loose plan that we'll have something commercial on the ground floor as an anchor, and we would have artists' apartments and on the top, and then like community space in the middle. Like my idea was always to have some kind of dance space for people, middle-aged people that don't want to go out at 1 o'clock in the morning. But anyways, I mean, it was kind
Shout
of.
out the Wheel Club for actually doing that these days.
And they are actually. The Fields Club is a great place if you're looking for and the Wheel Club
on Cavendish.
Yeah, no, I did go to the Wheel Club. I did.
That's what you're describing there. That's what the Wheel Club is today. To my
more
chagrin.
of those. We need more.
I agree. So go on. And this was the
So
vision.
anyway, that was my little dream to have that. But anyway, so
I like it.
We thought this would be a good idea, and we sort of presented it downtown, and they were on board. But then COVID took over everything, and nothing moved, right? So, and then of course during COVID, or just before COVID, I was kicked out of the party. So that didn't help. And I guess Projet Montreal just decided this is no longer a priority. And I don't know where it stands now with the new, you have to ask the new mayor. But if I had to bet on what's going on there, and these are all my suspicions, it's based on not on fact at all, but we're looking at prime land there, right? That's facing the park, a building that it has to come down. And I wouldn't be surprised if at some point they just say, we can't afford it anymore, we're going to sell it, and we'll find out who ends up the lucky buyer.
I have a question though. When you say it has to come down, the facade will be kept for architectural reasons?
Well, that's what we talked about, because there's a department at the city, the heritage department,
right,
wanted to keep the facade, but to be honest with you, I think I find it quite ugly. So I said, I know I'm not allowed to say that.
I definitely am not. I'm pro Sue here. Y'all are wilding sometimes by trying to preserve this building to the fullest. I get why you may want to, but I'm not personally gonna be sad if it gets refined into something more beautiful and modern.
Yeah, because what we would want to do is put windows, right? And it doesn't have windows because it was a theater. But if we could preserve portions of it and integrate that into some kind of, so that you remember what it was like, I think that would be much nicer. But I think this is all sort of academic, because I don't think it's ever going to happen, sadly, just because of the inertia at the city.
Well, you probably know, or maybe you don't, I have now I do. I have a kind of personal connection with the Empress, because I actually did see movies in there when I was a young man, when it was Cinema 5. And I also remember when Head and Hands had its offices in the Empress. And as you remember, I got into train modeling. And one of the things I did was I spent a lot of time and energy creating a model of the Empress. So part of that process was learning about its history. I actually got the original architectural drawings, and it was the building facade was so complex with all the Egyptian hieroglyphics and the Egyptian busts and all that kind of stuff that I had to design it. I couldn't model it by hand. I had to design it on a 3D rendering software and print it in 3D. It was the only way I could do it, and I became very attached to it, and I can appreciate as a contractor while that it doesn't make sense perhaps to keep the facade, but I'm still very attached to it. So I'll say
and
that.
a lot of people are.
Just want to take a second to shout out all the people watching. Alan just said good job. I know on YouTube we have Edward who's complimenting the conversation. Lynn Bono's there, so I just want to say thanks to all the people watching us live.
Oh, Lynn, I want you on the show to talk about the artificial turf. There, okay, I said it.
I love
Awesome. And so it's just like, it's cool that people are watching and engaged with it, so it's always important to remember the folk watching.
And
so that's the Empress. That's all I know. Like I have no idea where it is now.
Fair enough. So moving on, right? If I could just pull up my agenda here onto the next agenda item, which I've now conveniently lost. Oh, here it is. No, that's not it. Oh, here it is. Sorry about that. Right in front of me, of course. Wrong one. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm losing momentum here. Where are we?
I don't think I'm a member of Thrive anymore. I to be honest,
here we go.
I got off all those groups after I was no longer mayor. I couldn't.
Right.
So
I found it. And the next element on the agenda is when I was researching this interview, I went on Wikipedia and looked at your Wikipedia. I wanted to see what was out there on Sue Montgomery. And one of the funny things that you said was that during your administration that you stated that there was a coup d'etat essentially against your administration, and the civil service basically illegally wrestled control from the elected official, being you. And we entered into this saga in which you got into an open disagreement with the civil servants. And to make a long story short, in practical terms, you've won your victory. You've been vindicated. Everybody, Sue Montgomery has been vindicated. Okay, so if there's any question out there about what happened, Sue Montgomery was right. Okay, but during the coup d'etat, in a practical way, your power was usurped. You were basically effectively removed from office during your mandate, for that matter. And I thought maybe you could talk to that a bit.
Okay, well, it started in 2019 in the fall, because I had hired a new chief of staff, a young woman, Annalisa Harris, who's like 27 or something at the time. And, she was bright and experienced and it was what I really needed, because I didn't have political experience and she did. And so she had worked there for 3 months, and we had compiled a list of things that the borough director had not done, or where we had doubts and questions, the Empress audit being one of them. So it was a 20-page report, and we went to because I felt that the borough needed a new borough manager, is what I felt. And I had thought that for many years as a resident.
What's a borough manager do?
Director.
He's in charge. He's the director of all the civil servants, the hired people in the borough. And I think there's some 400 in our borough. And so he's the top civil servant. And
it's like the CEO of the civil servant people.
Yeah. And he works directly with the mayor, who is the elected person, and is supposed to do what the mayor says, regardless if he agrees with it or not, because I was elected by the people to do what the people wanted. So, that's what democracy is in practice. In theory, this person has all the power and often did not want to do what I wanted. And so I compiled a list of all these things and I took it to the Controller General of the city, Alan Bond, which is an office, by the way, that is not required by law. For some reason, we have a Comptroller General, and I'm not sure what he does, but he has a $10 million budget.
I don't know what he does either, because I don't know what that position is. Like, the
No,
regular
I don't
people
either.
don't talk about this stuff.
Well, I think it's like I think his job, honestly, I looked it up on, oh my goodness, I can't remember the name of the magazine in French, but Brian Miles was a journalist that wrote about this office when it first started up. And basically, he referred to it as the office that shuts down the whistleblowers. So,
Yeah.
I brought this to him and he said, okay, well, we'll do an investigation and we'll get back to you. So the next day, basically, or in a couple of days, he writes to me and goes, no, it's all unfounded. And then in December, then they leak the fact that they're investigating Annalisa Harris, my chief of staff, for harassment, psychological harassment of the bureaucrats. So my theory is that Alan Bond, the Comptroller General, was good buddies with the director of the borough. He called them up, said, listen, they want to get rid of you. Let's get rid of them before. So they start this investigation and they leak the story that Annalisa Harris, a 27-year-old woman, has been harassing a 55-year-old senior bureaucrat male who's been in his job for decades. So this is released to TVA. All hell breaks loose. I'm called into the mayor's office and she says, if this report comes out that Annalisa has been harassing people, you have to fire her. And I said, I will not fire her unless there's evidence. And I don't see any evidence. She's only been working for me for 3 months. She's been nothing but professional and smart and polite. She doesn't smile a lot. She doesn't laugh at jokes, but that's not harassment. So the mayor was very angry with me and pounded on her desk and was like, you got to do this. And to be honest, I remember it clear. She made me cry. Like, I was just like, what are you talking about? Like, we don't have any evidence.
You really
she said, I know this is bullshit, but you have to we have to make this go away. So December 6th, anniversary of the Polytechnique, I'm called into respect of the person office, which is Alan Bond's office, thinking I'm going to get the results of the investigation that I had asked for about the borough manager. 3 bureaucrats, civil servants are sitting there from human resources, and they said, we're not giving you a copy of the report. We're just because you're willfully blind to the harassment. But we're just going to read you the conclusions. And our conclusions are that Annalisa Harris has been harassing the borough manager. And I was speechless. I was livid. And I said to them, I know exactly what you're doing here. You are trying to protect lazy civil servants, and I will not go along with what you are doing. And Alan Bond said to me, well, you better do this, what we say, or you will end up in court. I said, fine, take me to court, because at least then it will be public and it will be above board. Like, I am not acting on a report that you're not giving me a copy of. So I stormed out.
Very principled stand you took there, Sue Montgomery. Very principled.
It was insane. It was like a Kafkaesque moment.
But it's wild because, like, even if, let's say, you had played ball, then you're now liable down the line when this comes out, because that's how these stories play out in the modern era where people hold people accountable for abuse of power.
Well, if I had fired Annalisa, she could have sued me for wrongful dismissal.
Exactly. which
Right.
is like, so like the fact that, like, honestly, if this was happening in Congress right now, everyone would care for some reason. But this is exactly the type of wild, like, it sounds like the plot of an HBO show, to be honest with you, when you're describing it.
Well, I think it's a sitcom because it's just so effing absurd. I don't know if I'm
And
allowed-
I always hear these stories, right, Sue? I remember the first time I met Pierre Bourque, and it was before all the caca hit the fan with Tremblay and all this kind of stuff, right?
Well,
And he was telling me about all this kickbacks and the shit, and I said, I can't believe this stuff. This can't be real. Then wham, in the news, it was all real. And
but my question, and I've thought all along, like, why is our borough manager who was there when Applebaum was convicted of fraud? How did the borough manager not know about this? And why did the director of permits hang himself?
yeah, you know, in any like we talking about CAOs, right? And major corporations, right? How the borough director, the borough manager, as you refer to him, he's the top of the chain. He's the top of the food
He
chain.
has to sign off.
And any major corporation, right? Where crap like this went down, who had major corruption, and one of the major employees committed suicide, the board of directors would say, you know what, Mr. CEO, you know, maybe you didn't know about it, maybe you did, we don't know, but you know what? I think we need a change here. We need to recycle things, you know, bring some new people in, turn a new page and move forward. We don't see any of that happening
And this is
at
the
all.
director that
Zero, zip.
put no accountability. He doesn't put anything in writing either.
And Gracia, you know, the current borough mayor, God bless her soul, she's trying, you know, I don't know what she's going through in a personal level, but when the news came out of the fact that you were vindicated, that the city paid out a sum, basically they're paying damages to you. Why are they paying damage to you? Because you were damaged by this process. That's what that is. Okay, everybody, you can't mince your words on that. And what did our borough council do? Didn't even mention it. Not once. There was no recognition. There was no acknowledgement. There was no like internal reflection. Zero. And
But that comes from the party. That comes from Projet Montreal.
To me, it doesn't matter.
Valerie Plante didn't
Same
even
difference. Everybody has to make a personal decision at the end of the day, Sue. You did.
But you know what was one of the most painful things through this whole experience? And it was friggin' painful, I have to tell you. I know I put on a brave face and often
You did.
bitchy face, but
you fooled me. I'll tell you that much. Go ahead.
I cried a lot. And I was suicidal at one point. I did not want to go on living because they destroyed my reputation. And I had a good reputation as a journalist. But the most painful thing was the friends I had in Projet Montreal from one day to the next stopped talking to me. On orders, I'm sure, of Valerie Plante. And that includes my own counselors who believed that Annalisa did not harass this person. And then all of a sudden they did. And they said, Sue has to fire her. You know, like none of them have any integrity at all. And that's what hurt me the most. And that Christmas, after that report came out, they were all at my house for dinner. I had a Christmas dinner party and not one of them backed me when I was kicked out of the party. Not one of them stood up and said, wait a second, except Christine Gosselin, who was a counselor in Rosemont Petit Patrie, she resigned. But otherwise, the rest of them, cowards.
Like,
and
is the money that good? Like, to be a counselor?
No, it's like $80,000 or something. It's not.
Like, it's not. I guess like it's not like the worst salary, but like at the same time, I feel like you should sell your soul for a much higher amount of money typically. Cause like,
I'm always shocked at that. I'm always shocked at how little money it takes to.
Well, they make little money, but you can make more by being on commissions and stuff. But the other thing is, nobody's really watching you. Like the residents are your boss. So you can work as little or as much as you want, right? Or you can look like you're working a lot, which a lot of people do.
Henry Aubin, the columnist at the Gazette, always used to refer to the counselors' jobs as part-time jobs. So, but I Sue, I do have something to say. I'm sorry. I really am. I want to apologize. I'm sorry that you had to suffer this. And
Well,
I'm
you guys
sorry.
at least rented a bus and came and supported me in my first, like
Yeah,
that.
but
Horrible
we did butt heads in different ways, but I don't want to go
Yeah,
into
yeah,
that.
yeah,
But
for sure.
I personally, and I want to do this, right? I personally apologize to you, and I sincerely, obviously I cannot appreciate what you experienced entirely. But I want you to know that I'm trying to think of those times in my life when I was under enormous stress. I went through a divorce, and I want to apologize that your desire to serve the public turned into a total and complete disaster for you personally,
Yeah, it
and
was
and
complete.
and you had to bear that. I apologize.
It was a nightmare. It really was. And every time I thought, okay, they've kicked me out of the party, fine, I'll sit as an independent. Then they would come out with me with something else. And so I went to Superior Court, Quebec Superior Court, and thank God they are neutral and do their jobs and, we're not political at all. That judge could not believe that they wanted me to fire someone without showing me the evidence. Like, in what world does that happen? So I
Well,
said, show me
And
the evidence.
especially because it's like at the same time, around the same time, Quebec like really tightened its labor laws about equality and respecting people. And
Yeah.
I know that everyone want to shit all over Quebec, but we have some of the most protect women labor laws that exist on books right now. Whether or not they're enforced in a high level is a whole other conversation. But at least at the lower level, it's pretty enforced. Like almost every company got audited and said, make sure all your women are managed. So all these reforms were taking place in terms of how employees are treated at the exact same time that this was playing out.
Yeah, so I won and I got the report. Like first I went to Access to Information to get it. It was completely redacted. It was all black, nothing. And so I had to go to court, and thank God for my lawyer, Eric Oliver, who just literally saved my life many times, because I called him many times to say I can't go on, and he would talk me off the ledge. And he said, one day, Sue, you're going to stand before everyone and say, I told you so. And that's what I'm doing today. But
and you need to tell your story, Sue. You do.
No, but nobody cares.
I care. People are listening, and I
don't think that you could. I understand that nobody cared at the time or in the middle of a political scandal, and unfortunately, that's how it plays out because the media is in the middle of lying on your name at that point. But after the fact, when the dust settles and the receipts are in your favor, a lot of people care. Like our death just came on the Facebook and said, I care. Like personally, I care. I remember your interview that we did a couple of years ago. Like in case y'all want to watch that, it's over 2 hours of Sue's story. So that whole Sue story part, it's like 2 hours of that. Like Mona also cares. And the chat's just popping up. But like the thing is like your life is pretty fascinating. Like they could probably make a movie out of you. And like
they will.
Like it would be
there will be a movie.
I want to be Barbie.
First,
you want to be in a movie, Sue. Come on, it'd be
and
fun.
Andy just popped up and said, more people care than you can imagine, but many of them are busy and preoccupied. They care, though. And I think a lot of the times there isn't good media coverage. We have journalists who are often boring, no offense to the field of journalism, but pundits is what drives your entertainment. And we lack that side of it to really bring the editorialization and opinions in to be like, this is fucked up, because journalists can't really go too far on opinions. Whereas,
this is messed up.
But having been a journalist for 30 years, this was the other issue that I faced, was I was so disappointed in journalists. Like I was an open book to them. I gave them whatever they wanted. I would be available for interviews, but they didn't believe me. Like they went with the, and made a better headline that there was harassment. There was a better headline that I was accused of conflict of interest. It was just like, I was so frustrated every time the news came out. And I thought, I'm not going to talk to journalists again, but that doesn't help either. So, there were times where I would say to journalists, because I know a lot of these people, right? I worked with them as a journalist, not not all of them. There were some younger ones, but they just didn't do their homework. They didn't read. Like I said to one, did you even read the Superior Court judgment? No, I don't have time. I would never, ever, as a journalist, do a story without reading the report or reading the judgment, or because people's lives are at stake. Like they destroyed me. They destroyed me. They destroyed Annalisa. I have not been able to get work since 2021 because people Google me and they see, oh, harassment, trouble. We don't want to deal with her.
I want to just interrupt for a brief second, Sue. There's people writing into me that are saying they're having challenges linking up to the podcast. Could you help them out there, Holden? It's on my page.
Who is saying that?
But it's on my page, Thrive. Just go on my page and you'll see it says live, and you can hook up to the podcast and listen to this awesome, fantastic, real. And
Alex, you posted. Alex, we gotta work on your Facebook marketing. The link is literally right there next in the next post.
Yeah, I can't get on either, actually. But do you have to be a member of Thrive?
No, it's on YouTube. Hold on. So it's on YouTube, it's on Twitter, it's on Twitch, it's on Facebook. It's posted directly to Alex's Facebook page.
Yeah, so but when I go to my Facebook page, when I'm looking,
the video is the second thing that appears on your page when you look, because you post it after the video. I digress. I will go post the link to it there, but
I'll pin it. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna pin post. Here we go. So I pinned it. It's the top of my page now.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry about that.
Just share. Anyways, use the share on the video in the future. All right.
All right. Okay. So
we're gonna keep this in. This is good content.
So then I get booted out. So the party was having a conference up in the Laurentians, and I decided I wasn't going to go because all of this was happening. I hadn't been kicked out yet. And on the Friday, my phone starts ringing like crazy. It's journalists, and they're saying, "How do you feel being kicked out of the party?" And I said, "What?" So Valerie Plante didn't even have the kahunas to call me and do it personally. She did it through the media. So that was another very painful move on her part.
So shady.
I was beside myself, but I thought, okay, but I still hadn't found a lawyer. So I was sitting in council the first day after I've been kicked out of the party. So we're not in COVID yet. So we're still gathering at city council. So there's two councils, right? There's the borough council and then the city council, which involves Valerie Plante and all the 102 ridiculous number of councillors we have in the city. So I'm sitting there, but they've moved me away from all the Projet Montreal councillors over to the far side of the room.
They call those the nosebleeder seats.
And I'm basically, there's a post blocking my view of Valerie, which I don't think was accidental. And then I'm beside or 2 seats away from my very favorite Marvin Rochon.
My favorite too.
And I'm like, I felt like I was in the corner with a dunce hat on or something. Like it was the worst.
You felt like I'm not trying to be mean to you, Sue, but that's essentially what happened. They put you in a corner with a dunce hat.
Oh my God, like you misbehave, you're going to be in a corner. So I was sitting there.
That's just like, again, I mean, you're bringing it up, and I know Alex is kind of glossing over it, but if this happened in anybody's company, it's like really
I'm not glossing
It's harassment of me.
But like, and I think that like this is a really big story of how of systemic corruption. Somebody said it in the comments. It's like it's a story of systemic corruption that is happening. Where unfortunately, Sue, you are the person that it happened to, and arguably you're the wrong person to mess with is what they found out, because a lot of people probably just suck it up, right?
You should be proud.
And the only reason that we're even having this conversation in the first place is because you have the integrity to not do what they asked, and
you're still there.
Because that happened, a bunch of bad shit went down, unfortunately. but it
But I'm
also
the only one
highlights.
that's unemployed in this whole, and all the cast of characters. I'm the
Yeah, you
only
could
one
write
who
a
doesn't
book
have an
right
income.
now. You have a different future ahead of you if you want to go down some other avenues that were maybe not as open, but now are really open. It's all about how you
Your
want to
story is,
take the
yeah,
reins and steer it now.
I
But
agree with Holden. Your story is not over. And I want to add that in the prep work for this interview, what happened was Alan Bond threw the book at you and took you to the commission, right?
Yeah.
And I looked up the commission, and I wanted to see what this commission was all about. And
Wait, French guys.
and so I looked at the judges, right? And not only are they the François Legault idealistic vision of what Quebec should be, they're all civil servants.
Yep.
So Sandra Bilodeau, Sylvie Perrault, Céline Lahaye, Joseph and André Roy. I learned that from Patrick Roy. Martin Saint-Laurent, Ménélie Robert, and Philippe Assé. So there we are.
And the one
but
who,
I think that
I call that,
the
excuse
French
me,
thing aside,
I
Alex,
call that
like,
I call that a
fair
kangaroo
enough.
court. Sorry.
That's fair. But I think the fact that they're all civil servants, which, as we learned earlier, means that they're people part of this bureaucracy that are hired officials. So these people are getting checks by like the private, whereas the elected officials are getting checks via the public. So who pays you, or I mean, I'm sure it's the same government that pays you, but how you got your job is entirely different, which affects your loyalties in theory. So the fact that you're kind of put before a council of people that are handpicked by the people that you went against in the first place, I believe when you're watching jury duty shit, none of those people should be allowed to be the jury duty because they have a conflict of interest and there's a lack of impartiality in it. It's like how they do shit at corrupt churches with like having like, you know, chosen people to enforce strange power dynamics rather than truth seeking. I think that's more relevant than any of the Quebec shit because, I mean, let's be real, we live in Quebec. A lot of people are French white people.
Yeah, but it doesn't bother me that they're French white people. But when I see this list, you know, I don't see anybody there when I look through their biographies and their profiles that they were a former elected official, right? That they were
that part's really relevant.
Yeah, that somebody that was you know, part of the Commission Municipal that was outside sort of the realm of the public realm of the civil service. And I will tell you this from experience that the world that the civil servants live in is very different than the world that we live in. It's a different type of world, the mentality, the way they approach things. I don't know if Sue, you agree with me on that, but I just find as a person, as a business owner, as someone who has lived in the business side of the world, when I deal with civil servants, it's very strange. It's not the same language. It's
no.
It's
At least here, I don't know what it's like anywhere else in the country, but
I lived in Ontario and I don't think it's the same. There's a real culture here, a civil service culture. And the interesting thing is I always tell my friends that in Quebec, we call them fonctionnaires. So they make things function, right? Where in Ontario or the rest of Canada, the English word is public servant, right? They were civil servant. They're serving the public, right? So there's that kind of disconnect. But I have a question for you, Sue, in terms of the civil service. It's something that's kind of piqued me throughout my engagement with dealing with the city of Montreal. When you're dealing with the civil servants in the borough level, are you dealing with an organization that's borough centric, or is it like still very much tied like to the central city? Is it like an appendage of the central city, or is it an independent kind of like? I've always wondered about that because when I talk,
I didn't deal with downtown. Like we had a director in the borough. We had the borough director, we have a director of sports and rec, we have a director of urban planning and permits, a director of finance. So there were different I think there were 5 or 6 or maybe 7 directors and then people under them. But I wasn't allowed to speak directly to any of those directors without the borough director being present, which I also thought was kind of odd. He very much had to be on top of what was being said and who it was being said to.
And you,
Oh.
sorry, but you made a decision during your administration that when there was inquiries coming through the public, they had to go through your office, which I agreed with, because what I felt based on, my 20 years engagement with the city is that the councillors or the borough director was passing out kind of like favors to the councillor to resolve local issues so they could win votes or gain support for the next election. What I'm saying is that
maybe. But I came up with that because I wanted to know what was going on. I wanted to have the pulse of the people. Like, what are people complaining about? What are the issues out there? I thought it was my business to know, what are the problems? So that's why I insisted on that. But I was constantly being, roadblocks.
Does every borough have an equivalent set of directors?
Yeah.
Is that like how the city's broken down? So it's like there's the center city and they're responsible for what, downtown? Like they're the downtown people,
They're
or does downtown
for the bigger issues like heritage or like parks. There'll be a parks person, like big parks like Mount Royal.
right?
Yeah, it's very honestly, and the 4 years that I was there, I still couldn't figure out. Like, I kept asking questions, and
Right.
even the borough director said to me, "You ask a lot of questions," and I'm like, "That's my job to understand. Like, why do you do things like this?" And he says, "It's always been done. Like, nobody's ever asked us why, so we never thought about it." I said, "But it doesn't make any sense. Like nothing made sense to me." So they didn't like that either. Like, who are you to come in here and tell us that, whatever didn't make sense? But I was trying to understand why they did things the way they did. But anyway, so I just want to go back to where I was sitting after I was kicked out of the party, sitting there in council, feeling like with the dunce hat on. And I get this email in my laptop because I had been calling lawyers about this, and all of them said to me, "Just fire her. You're not going to win." And I said, "But I can't. Like, on principle, I cannot do that. I couldn't live with myself." And I even said to Annalisa, "What do you want? Do you want, like, you could leave and get a big package from the city, or also Projet Montreal had offered her a job, which I found odd. Like, she's a harasser, but you want to hire her." Like, they were like, "You just fire her and we'll give her a job and that'll make it fine." I was like, "No, I'm not doing that." So I gave her the choice and she said, "I want to stay." I said, "Okay, well then put on your boxing gloves." But I had no idea how hard they would fight back and try to bring me down. And win, basically, they did. They destroyed me. But so anyway, I was sitting
for now. You still have a lot of life left to go out there and get justice.
But so I get this email from this guy, this lawyer, Eric Oliver, who says, "I've been following your case in the papers, in the news, and it doesn't make any sense. Like, could we have a discussion?" And I just felt like it was like, I'm not religious, but this message from heaven or the goddess or whatever that, okay, maybe I can fight this, So we had a great conversation. I went to his office. I had all my documents and I gave it to him. He said, "We're going to take this on." And I burst into tears. Like, I was just like, thank God, like, thank you. Because I just felt so alone in this fight. Like, nobody's, like, it was like, does nobody see how wrong this is? Like, come on. And Valerie wouldn't talk to me. I was trying just to have a conversation with people. She sent other counselors to tell me, "You got to fire Annalisa because you're going to ruin all the work we've done." I said, "Well, what about ruining someone's life? Like, does that matter to you guys?" Like, I just couldn't believe that they were willing to push this young woman out, hang her, basically, like to accuse her, to try her, to convict her with no trial, like no evidence. It was just wrong. So anyway, I got this lawyer And we went to Superior Court and I got a copy of the report. And in it, basically it says, Annalisa doesn't smile very much. And for a woman of her age, she's quite assertive. They said that the fact I had a poster
That's
in my
wildly sexist.
and the fact that I had a poster in my office that said less bullshit, more feminism, that was discriminatory towards men. And I'm like, men can be feminists. It doesn't say like, let's kill all men. Like, what the? And it was my office. Like, it's my space. I'm going to put up what I want as long as it's not offensive to others.
I can't tell you that whined about your feminism poster.
What?
That's a real, like, it's on
That's
record
in the
somewhere.
report. It's in the report.
That somebody felt threatened by your post. Yo, sometimes men be wildly the opposite of manly based on their own definitions.
Yeah, I hurt their feelings by saying
that's hilarious. And it's not funny in the way.
Well,
like,
they might have been offended by the bullshit. Like maybe I was, I was calling the word bullshit, but it was a lot of it.
Can I do something here? I want to drill down. Can I drill down something? I want to get to the real kind of core of it. So in my mind, you had a working kind of like disconnect and disagreement. You weren't comfortable with your borough director, your borough manager. You're the borough mayor of the borough CDNDG. And that just drilled down to it. You got into a disagreement and with the borough director.
There was never a disagreement, ever. It was just
whatever the case,
right? Like you guys created my understanding is you created a report that called them on their bullshit. On paper. Like, here's a list of everything you failed to do properly. What's up? But you put it on paper.
But in my mind, as you're the elected representative, you're the borough mayoress, you're the top cheese, right? So in my mind, when I'm running my business, right, I decide, is it relationship between me and this employee, subordinate manager working or not? If it's not working, sorry, got to move aside, bring someone else new, and until the relationship works, until I feel I'm getting the results that I'm expecting. This is how I kind of see the world, okay? And I'm trying to drill down. So essentially, this is kind of what's going on in my mind. And it came to a loggerheads, and what happened was that you lost.
Yeah, well,
is that a correct drill down of what happened? Like,
the borough manager, all the council has to do is vote. Right. But I had, even though Projet Montreal agreed as we were running for election that we needed a new borough manager because Peter McQueen had been there and Magda Popiano, and they
wanted him out. They wanted him out. They told me they wanted him out. Yeah, I knew that. I was surprised.
But when it came time to act, would they give me the vote? No.
But did it get entangled? The question I have is, did it get entangled with a larger civil service issue at the central city, and they put leverage on the city mayor and Valerie Plante? Is this what's happening in your mind?
I think that's what happened. I think they made up this report. I think they went to Valerie Plante and said, "This is really bad.
Right,
is really going to damage you. You got to get rid of her."
But Valerie Plante
never read the report. I said to her, "Have you read the report?" She said, "I'm not allowed to." I said, "Valerie, you're the mayor."
Yeah, but Valerie Plante, I'm not defending her, but what I'm getting the impression is that Valerie Plante needs the civil servants to execute her plan. And you were like, okay, we can sacrifice this person in order to get this stuff done. But the problem is that in the city of Montreal, we have a systemic problem of the political culture and the civil service culture that I think prevents from local needs being serviced properly. Yep. There's this disconnect.
Honestly, it sounds to me like Homeboy has a cushy job and doesn't do a whole lot. And then
I always like to drill down
his bullshit. But your drill down was all over the place. No offense, Alex. But she already explained this part. But you called him on his bullshit. And then that means that if this goes forward and you're able to prove on paper that one of these motherfuckers is acting so incorrectly, it opens up a can of worms to literally audit the entire city's use of money, and nobody wants that crap. That's really, ironically, what you should have been focusing on, Alex, because it supports everything you preach for all the time. And this would have been a proof to the pudding, because if what you're saying is true, they're supposed to respond to you. You've got a documented list of issues you're not getting follow-ups on. And then basically you can prove that there's this waste. There's corporate waste happening here because XYZ efficiency is not taking place. People aren't really doing anything. Then if that comes out, trust, every one of these guys in the same position, if in this boys club, is probably a dude who's been there way too long. I'm sure there's women too. People who have been there way too long and like are just used to I'm sure these people make more money than the elected officials, and they're really comfortable making their six-figure protected ass old school politician, like we're trying to be the U.S. government jobs. Because Montreal, I'm just speaking into the realness. We don't need no political jargon and fucking niceties. That's what it looks like based on what was described.
I just want to go back a bit to tell you about, like, I've been in this situation before with the Montreal Gazette when it was owned by the Asper family in Winnipeg, like, you know, hard-nosed Zionists that wanted to take over the editorial slant of the paper. And I wrote a column about it, and I was suspended for 2 weeks. And I fought that. And I was suspended without pay for 2 weeks. I didn't even do anything illegal compared to one of the columnists who was caught smoking weed on the Prime Minister's plane, but he was suspended for 3 days. But I was suspended for 2 weeks for speaking truth to power. And I fought it, and I won also, and I got my money back. But, you know, I don't stand for this shit.
But
No one should.
Just to tell you, like,
People do all the time. People like, you know, I fought this alone with my lawyer, like no one else. And I don't blame people.
wow, there's Andy
Hold on,
Falcone.
Alex, let her speak. Alex, let her
Come on. Okay, ready.
Oh, but most people, when I was going door to door in 2021, I ended up in tears most days because people were slamming their doors in my face saying, we want a mayor who's not spending her time in court fighting battles. Well, I was standing up for justice and for what was right. And if that's not what you want, like, I don't know what you want. Like, is all you care about that snow is removed? I mean, anyway, so let's go back to what happened February 14th. I'll never forget this because it's Valentine's Day. And Alan Bond puts out a press release saying that Sue Montgomery has been charged with 28 breaches of ethics. He puts out a press release. Like, this is supposed to be, first of all, it's supposed to be confidential. Second of all, you know, tells the media, doesn't tell me. And it's like things like being rude to a civil servant. Like, how is that a breach of ethics? And show me one time when I was rude. The conflict.
But also, like, what does that mean?
Well,
What's the polite police? Like, I bet a lot of people think I'm rude because I have what they call resting bitch face.
Right, me too.
You don't. You're beautiful, Holden.
Well,
I think that shit I'm not on camera.
It's because I stormed out of the meeting where they told me that Annalisa was harassing people. Well, and I just thought, I'm not staying in this room. Like, you guys are a bunch of idiots. I didn't say that, but I stormed out. And I was angry. Like, I guess, you know, you're not supposed to be angry when you're a woman. You're supposed to say, okay, I'll do what you need.
You're allowed to be angry. Angry is cool. You know, I get angry.
Alex.
The conflict of interest. So they put conflict of interest in there because that piques people's interest that, oh, she's corrupt. The conflict of interest was that I suspended Stephan Plante, the borough manager, for insubordination because he didn't do what I asked him to do. And I had every right to suspend him. But of course, the wimpy little council overturned it every time.
Yeah, I remember
people,
that.
Right?
I was really disappointed about that. No, Holden.
I just want to clarify.
It's
like,
my turn.
This is the city council, as in like the six
borough,
of you, like
yeah.
the mayor
Borough
and the other
council.
five.
Borough council.
Peter McQueen,
Right.
Magda Papian.
And I would like to think, you know, you never know how you would react in a given situation, that's certain. But I would like to think that if I was on council and borough council, the CDN borough council, and the borough mayor or the borough mayor of of CDNEG had an issue with the borough director, I would like, well, you know what? This is an authority issue, right? We have like, what kind of precedent are we setting from an organizational point of view if we're not going to support the borough mayor, whatever her decision is? She needs to make these decisions that she thinks she needs to move things forward in the borough. Basically, they undermine you. It was a terrible thing they did.
Well, because it was political.
It was political on a variety of different ways. The Perez Mordial want to undermine you, and the same thing with Perez and Marvin Rothschild on the other end. It was really everybody doing something that was not in the interest of the borough. It was basically driven by their own personal interests or their party's
interests. So the other
interests.
elected officials and this is worth pointing out because, translating it into basic, the other people y'all elected, because you picked a mayor and a city councilor, decided to back the old school bureaucracy when push came to shove.
And I will name names: Peter McQueen, Magda Popianu, Marvin Rotran, and Lionel Perez. Okay.
And Christian Arsenault.
And Kristen Arsenault. Thank you very much. I missed Kristen Arsenault.
No, none of them. I was alone.
And Christian at that point was still independent, so in theory,
he
was the party push. Or was he was part of Projet Montreal?
He was part of Projet Montreal, yeah. He was still.
So this is when this is where the party system, which is weird for city politics, apparently. I say weird as in other major cities don't have party politics, so it's weird that Montreal does. It's
a bad thing for local needs and local politics that we have political parties.
Because then you have. So what happens if the city councilors defy the party? I guess they get kicked out and all the shit you went through.
And it's very hard to get elected in the city of Montreal unless you're assigned with a party. And in fact, running as independent, as Sue will testify, and I will testify because I've done it twice, is akin to political suicide, right? It's very hard. And
so I'm accused of these 28 breaches, and of course they leak that goes out to the media, and everybody chooses to run with conflict of interest as a headline to make me look really corrupt. So, and then they drag this out. So this is 2020. So it's not until 2021 that I have my 2-week trial where they call all these witnesses to say, all these horrible things about me. And the commission comes out right before the election and says that it finds me guilty of 11 of these breaches and suspends me as mayor. So
I remember that.
So forget about winning any kind of election. So we go to court right away. We get an injunction for that suspension, but we also go to Superior Court to appeal these convictions of breaches, and we win in January 2022 after the election. So they clearly waited. Their timing is impeccable. They waited like an entire year and a few months to come out with this decision right before the election.
And I believe they did everything in their power to discredit you, because I remember that's when I decided to care about local politics, and it seemed like
I agree with you 100%. I agree with you 100%, Sue Montgomery. I don't believe anything happens in politics nothing's a coincidence. Everything happens for a reason. And I noticed this in my own engagement. Things happen. I don't want to get into specifics, but you can see the dirty politics playing itself out. And that's why before I met with you, I went to these characters in the commission to figure out who these people were, because it was a circus, really. And
well, the judge that even that 2-week, I mean, I've covered murder trials that were shorter than 2 weeks. Like, it was like, what a waste of taxpayers' money.
Right.
And it was a bit of a circus because the guy that was they're not judges, they're I don't know what they're called that preside over this, but he used to be a borough manager in another municipality. And, it was supposed to be on Zoom, and the Zoom link didn't work. So there was an issue about, like, I contested that. I said it has to be public. I want people to be able to see this because it's a kangaroo court. So there was a lot of things going on that, you know, were really not correct. And but my lawyer believes that the commission has had its fingers wrapped since this, because he says there are a lot fewer cases coming before him. And I just want to explain to the listeners and viewers or whatever, that the commission is it's like the College of Physicians, for example, oversees behavior of doctors. The commission is to oversee behavior of elected officials. So if you had an issue with an elected official doing something incorrectly, you would go to the commission, and they would do an investigation and decide, was the elected official within their. So my question is, like, who filed all these complaints against me? I wonder. So it was just like this hammering. Like every time I won one court case, they would come out with something else. Then we get like, this won't stop her, let's do this. This won't stop her, let's do. And it was relentless. And there were times where I would be curled up in a ball in my bed, sobbing to my husband and my kids, saying, I can't do it. I can't do it anymore. But it was like, if you quit now, they win. Like, you gotta keep.
We just got a pointed question from Andy. Asked Sue to tell you about some of the educational materials that the commission puts out about elected official wrongdoing. That seems very relevant to right now.
All right. Yes. I talked to Andrew Cadell. You know him, Sue Montgomery. He was a counselor in Montreal West for many years, and now he's living in, believe it or not, beautiful. I wrote this down, Kamouraska. Am I pronouncing that right? Kamouraska. That's right.
Yeah, and he's a counselor there.
Yeah, and he won. He ran for council there, and believe it or not, he ran as an Anglophone and won one of the biggest majorities ever accorded to a councillor in Kamouraska. That's how successful his campaign was. And afterwards, he had to take an ethics course provided by the Quebec. What is it? Something municipal union or something?
It's the municipal Quebec municipal. No, it's the Commission de.
Where is it again?
Quebec Municipal Commission. Sorry.
Yes, and in just to show you how systemic the kind of like cultural problem is in Quebec. Before your case was making its way through the courts, before it even had been resolved, it had arrived at a conclusion. They were going around the province and using you as model of unethical behavior. And Andrew Cadell stood up and said, "This is not ethical, what you're doing." He says, "I'm pretty sure, I'm willing to bet you money that she's going to win her case. And for you to create a course on ethics and use Sue Montgomery as an example, right, of unethical behavior is unethical." And he got into loggerheads with the gentleman who was giving the presentation. And when you won your case, he actually sent him an email telling him, "See, she won her case." And I just find it incredibly disturbing that here you have a woman who's an Anglophone. I'm going to make these connections. I'm sorry. Okay. You're a woman who's an Anglophone, who's a feminist, right? Who is the mayor of CDN, borough mayor, CDNDG, who's essentially, her power has been usurped, illegally taken away by the civil service, right? So it's under very dubious circumstances, with evidence and accusations that are very hearsay, right? Like, it became kind of like a scandal. And because of that, you are being used as the kind of like golden child, as the example of unethical behavior in the province of Quebec. It just blows me away.
Because it's what the message to all elected officials is: you question anything,
shut the hell up.
This is what's going to happen to you.
That's right.
That's actually like a really big point. So my understanding is you're now being presented to new officials as the example of how to not
challenge
behave,
authority. Yeah,
even
challenge
though
authority.
your case was not finalized up until, I don't actually know when it got finalized.
My
I think
understanding
September.
is they've taken
September
it out.
2000.
I think they've taken it out now. No?
I personally feel that
I
they
mean,
deserve you deserve
but
an apology.
whether or not they took it out,
I can't
this
understand
is
how
one
that
of those
arrived.
examples
That's
where
messed up.
it's actually really fucked
That's-
up that they
That's
would
fucked up.
use
Sorry, I
that
had to
as
use
an
the F word. I
example.
couldn't help myself.
And I just put explicit content on this show, but
I'm shaking my head. I really am beside myself. I can't believe that we're always watching the TV of dirty laundry that happens in the United States, right? We have stuff right here. It's right in front of us. It's like, like François
also,
Legault said,
I don't
right?
think like
An
there is
extraordinary
a
nation.
lot of like I think that a lot of people aren't aware of this because it isn't covered in mainstream media by any conventional tactics. And as much as I wish I had a platform, we are a long way away from viewers that count in terms of critical mass. So it's like
I found frustrating too, because I joined all these Thrive and NDG winning and NDG this and NDG that. And, a lot of people would discuss it and say, quite frankly, some pretty horrible things about me. And I would actually engage and say, this is what happened. And I would give them the link to the Superior Court decision. I give them the link to, I was totally honest, open book. This is what's happening. But people want to believe what they want to believe. And I still think that's the case today. And there was a time, like after this past spring, that was so difficult for me. I actually had to get therapy because I was suffering such severe PTSD because I couldn't walk through the borough. People recognized me and they would say, "Aren't you Sue Montgomery? You're the mayor. You were the mayor. You are the..." And it just was so triggering. Even being on Zoom, I find triggering because that's how we had to hold our meetings all the time during COVID. And, I'm not into this whole trigger warning and trigger this, trigger that, but I actually experienced severe PTSD. And I didn't realize that that's what was happening to me because I didn't want to live anymore this spring. And because I didn't have a job, my reputation was destroyed. I couldn't go out without being recognized in a negative way. And so finally in this September, we were going back and forth with the city. They started, they wanted to settle because obviously they didn't want any of this to come out in trial. Because it would have been I think they recognized finally, we screwed up.
Yeah, but did anybody get fired? Was anybody held accountable for this?
And I keep saying there should be an investigation into the respect of the person. Alan Bond's office should be investigated because I don't know what they do.
I agree with you. There should be. And I think Alan D'Souza of Assemblée Montreal asked for
accountability. Bridges can fall down and kill people. There's no accountability in this province ever.
There's no accountability. No.
None.
Nope. I agree.
And people are happy, fine with that.
And if someone really does something crappy, a lot of times what happens is they just shuffle them around, right? Okay, we'll move them over there, and everybody's happy. We're loyal. The civil service. When I talk to civil servants, they always tell me, well, when you join the civil service in Montreal, you have to be loyal to the civil service, right? You sign on to that, right? So it's this culture, right? And it permeates not just the city of Montreal in my mind, but
I just don't think a lot of people are aware of this, right?
No, they're not.
I mean, I speak to a perspective of, let's say, under 40 people that did not grow up with English media for the most part. Let's be real. The Gazette's been kind of online and trash my adult life. No offense to the Gazette. They do what they can, but come on, everybody did for Toronto for bigger salaries. So the amount of English journalism here that's fire is just not it, right? So everything's in French. And from what I understand, French media actually does present different stories on truth to English media. So I think that a lot of people got misled over it, and then there isn't a lot of easy ways to follow up on something like this. How do I get more information? I heard there was a book that came out in French about this situation. And then other than that, I've seen nobody cover this on YouTube really. There's no TikToks. There's nothing that would like really actually introduce me to this topic. And then add to all of that the social media news ban. I don't even know what the hell's going on anymore. Like, I'm not going to cbc.ca. I'm sorry, CBC. If nobody's sharing that shit in my face, I'm not looking at your stuff. And I know that's potentially lazy on my end, but like every time I go to their homepage, it's garbage and there's no algorithm or nothing. It's like I don't care about none of the stories. Because again, local news is not really lit. So
Right.
unfortunately, this is the type of thing where like I mean, this stuff plays out on YouTube all the time. Like this kind of power dynamics and really there are paths forward. They're just unfortunately guerrilla and content driven. It is more about sensationalized TikToks about how you pull up on the video with the big 3 reasons why the city of Montreal is corrupt as fuck. And like it's that kind of stuff coming from a qualified voice that creates the level of awareness and engagement that comes. Like, I know people think Facebook matters, but it really is the least relevant social media platform. It is like the
old people.
The only, it's not just that. I mean, look, Thrive NDG
For all
is the
people,
only,
that's right.
the only thing of value. And then like it's good for community. So like a lot of people in my hip hop community are there because we're all there, and Thrive NDG is cool. But like, it's not really like Facebook is a reflection of a bigger population of the whatever. If there's millions of people in the greater Montreal area, I promise you, you're only reaching a max 5 to 10% of them through a social media platform like Facebook. And I think a lot of the news and the awareness issues that we face are because there isn't more flashy things happening. And it's not really on you, Sue, unfortunately. It shouldn't be on you to have to turn your case into a pop sensation to get justice. But that is kind of how you get advocates who then go and really do all the work for you. Get some 22-year-olds who find your case on TikTok, and then it's over. They do all the work for you. It's just a matter of connecting the emotional passion of youth to your story and correlating it how it's exactly the same type of systemic corruption they hate in patriarchy-driven corporate America, except it's happening with their money, because it is happening with their money. They all pay rent, and as we learned, that goes to taxes.
So if you're a 22-year-old and you're listening to this podcast and you have an interest in getting engaged in community, you want to get the story out, please reach out to Sue, myself, Holden, and let's take it forward.
Last spring, I actually took a screenwriting course because it's a very different kind of writing. Of course, I am a writer, but it's a different kind of writing. I had no idea how to go about it because I wanted to write a sitcom about being a mayor of this borough because you can't make this stuff up. I mean, it's so absurd. And I wanted to call it C'est compliqué, madame, because that was the answer I got for everything. Like, can we do this? C'est compliqué.
If you did that on TikTok as a series of shorts,
I think that would sell. It'd be hilarious.
Look, and this is what I meant when I told people like politicians be wildly boring. It's because nothing's stopping from a politician from writing short comedy sketches to express their points to a wider audience, except for a fear of what the old-timey parents who currently vote think. But let's say you don't have that and you just have a story. I mean, you could have a whole new career being a public figure in a different way where, like, you know what?
Well, I mean, if there's any young people out there on TikTok, let me know. Because
we can have a conversation, but really we just sit you up in front of a camera, point and click, tell your story. Like, I know it sounds wild, but in this era, even you could handle the video editing. It's that easy. It's so point and click. It's so basic.
I know. But it's more the content.
I hear you. Well, that's where you work with somebody and they sit there and go, all right, Sue, let's turn this into something. Like we can have a conversation about that. Because like it's about pipelining in and just kind of turning it. Because like that's how you get the public to, or at least the younger, more loud things to get involved. In the older crowd, I don't know how to get them motivated. They seem to only care about their houses and anything to do with their houses.
There's no removal.
Paths and parking spots, and that's all they care about. So
So
I don't know how to deal with
another-
those ones. But there's a lot of us out there that if we were aware of the kind of corruption that exists here with such a tangible and like kind of clean cut case of it in your story, there's a lot of moves you could make to get more people on board.
But there's another point I want to make about this whole saga that I went through, and it has to do with the coup and Annalisa. So, you know, at one point, Alan Bond met with all the directors of my borough and said, no one is to have any contact with Annalisa. None of them, none of the civil servants. And she's my right-hand person, right? Like, I need her to do my job. So we're in COVID, and I decided the way that we would get around this, like, to me, that's like bullying, right? Like, you're back in high school or elementary school where no one's going to talk to Annalisa. So we'd be in a meeting, and if her name came up, you know, on Zoom, you can see who's in the meeting, they would all leave. Or before COVID, if she walked in the room, they all walked out. Like, it was elementary school bullshit. So the way I got around that was I would call her on my cell phone, put it on speakerphone, and then have the Zoom meeting so she could hear what was going on and could like text me no and
These
take
are
notes.
grown ass adults.
Yep.
Like,
So if
these are the people
anyone
that
was
call me
harassed-
immature in life.
If anyone was harassed in this whole saga, it was Annalisa. And that just broke my heart. Like, you can't imagine what that poor woman went through either. So in the end, we sued, but quite frankly, I don't think no amount of money could heal what we went through.
I hear you. I really, again.
And then by the time we paid our lawyer, you know, we're not going home with a lot of money.
The city didn't pay your legal fees for that? No.
No.
That's too bad. That's unfortunate. But I want to backtrack about the conversation that we had about social media and how you felt kind of like attacked by the mob. And I saw that. I've experienced that, and I have to own up to what the social media was and continues to be to a certain degree. But what I see is I have to have hope, because I have a lot of hope for social media. I think social media can be used as a vehicle for democratizing society, right? I think, though, we're kind of in the Wild West portion of social media where it's new to us, and a lot of us, and I own that, we're acting immature on this public forum. Like, we were saying things and we're not really having that much accountability for what we say, and not being very considerate for the other person or their feelings or their position they're in. And I think that we're evolving, and I have hope that people will.
There's just better moderation in place, to be honest with you. I don't think.
What's that?
It's just better moderation in place.
Yeah. But I do still see like this kind of like trolling, very negative poo-pooey kind of like activity to happen online. It's not productive. It's not constructive. And I find that, you're always going to have that typeset, that personality out there. And we have to learn, it's a double-edged sword. We need to learn how to ignore it. And then on the other end, we need to, on a collective way, say that this is not appropriate online public behavior, right?
So it becomes a freedom of speech issue at that point, where arguably Canadian freedom of speech is not American freedom of speech. But, here's the thing. People need to have the right to shit talk the mayor, in my opinion. No offense to the mayor, whoever it may be.
Right.
And Thrive NDG is more akin to hanging out in the park with drinking beers.
Right.
And if the mayor happens to walk through a bunch of drunk people, you kind of, by choosing to be a mayor, you deal with that. The same way that we're podcasters now, Alex. Right. You are fully anybody that want to criticize us, all of that.
And they do,
what we
right? And I'm cool with that. But I don't shit in the park, right? I go to the toilet, right?
But at the same time,
like over time, we've developed rules
think
which
that,
that are
like,
courteous. When I see someone and say, I say, hi, how are you? Have a good day. And even if we don't like them, there's kind of this kind of respectful courtesy that exists, right?
social
And
media is a
sometimes
weird place where you have
I don't think it's
the
so
social
weird.
media
I just think
environment,
we're
which
acting
is a lot
immature,
of
right?
people.
It's
But
evolving. So that's my hope, right?
it's not really going to evolve the way you want. But however,
Nothing
what you're
evolves the
looking
way I
for
want.
is actually
I've learned
happening
that
on TikTok
the hard
a
way.
lot. Actually, what you're looking for is going on with younger people on other platforms where they are more politically active. In other countries, social media is used heavily for political purposes and whatnot. It's just that unless people are arguing about you, you're not going viral. So you actually, and this is the worst part, you need that shit. You kind of need these people to be talking all the crap about you if you want your case to win. If you don't have hundreds and hundreds of people shit talking you will never get the defenders that will galvanize behind you and push you to fame, because it's really an issue of fame and relevancy at this point. And that's what social media has done, is it's made regular people celebrities in this context.
Yeah, but that's a double-edged sword, because what happens, and you're seeing this in the States, and you see it happening here as well, is you get this really kind of divide, this partisanship divide, where people are not talking to each other anymore. They're like screaming at each other and lancing accusations. But I think this is a growing up process that we need to do.
I'm just gonna go with, back in the day, y'all were equally as immature in just private.
I'm not saying that we weren't. I'm not suggesting we're not, but
it's just now. But because it's now actually really public, what you are seeing is people are getting over the severity of things. So people don't really get fired for 2012 tweets anymore. That craze is moving on, and a lot of the overly shocking sensationalism of people, like, it's not like the general public's into shock value anymore. But up until about 2016, y'all were pushing 80s comedies, which is all shock value and stuff, as the comedic gold of the world. So if everything that olden folk heralded as funny is cruel, fucking mean shit, of course everybody making jokes on the internet's doing cruel shit. Y'all told us that was funny until like 2010, and now y'all are whining that comedy's dead. So I'm putting the entire onus of that on old people who made me watch these really racist, sexist comedies back in the day and trained my entire sense.
But I'm
of
Gen
this.
X. I'm not accountable for anything.
But like I mean that like, it's the type of stuff that people don't think about, but it's often the humor that creates this dynamic. It's when people make jokes that it becomes problematic. But humor in America is all about belittling and making fun, and people look at it like they're punching up when it's a mayor, and you're always allowed to punch up. That's always been the rule of old school comedy. So I kind of agree with what you're saying in terms of productive means forward, but it's also equally as productive to have political comedy and all this other shit. It's just unfortunately shitty for the person who receives it. Like, I had to learn how to take criticism on the internet. I had to learn that process, and it was brutal.
So
now
did I.
Y'all can say what you want about me. I don't care no more. But that whole process was sucky. And unfortunately, I think it has very bad elements to it. Like, I've seen death threats on me over album reviews, which is fucking weird because it's an album review. But at the same time, like, because those people had that conversation, I gained fans. Other people came and checked out my channel. I'm like, yeah, I like this. Subscribe. So it's like... But one comes with the other in this game.
And yeah, I agree. And I knew that becoming a public figure, it would be like that. But I'd already had that experience as a journalist. I mean, a lot of people hated what I wrote.
And you were a journalist when you had to start doing Twitter every day.
Yeah, right. I remember learning it and thinking, what is the point of this? But anyways,
I can't stand Twitter.
Then I became and then the most famous story I did was "Been raped, never reported," that very bad hashtag, but it went viral. And like, I didn't have to do one interview or any research, and that put me on the map as a journalist. So that was kind of weird. But all that to say that I understood the criticism, but what bothered me was people writing things about this situation. And even when I gave them the facts and the evidence and like engaged with them, they didn't want to hear it. Like, people wanted me to be wanted to hate me no matter what.
I think another part of it is nobody really wants to hear it from the person being accused, but had anybody else made that video about you, like really like YouTube style, like here's the evidence with the good editing and shit, it would have hit differently with everybody, because it's some third party being like, yo, I think this is fucked up, and having somebody else present that, like, because it's politics, right? And
no, it's true. And the city did a very good job of just pounding the message that Sue Montgomery is responsible for a toxic work environment. Sue Montgomery is responsible for a toxic work environment. And that's why in our settlement, we insisted that they say that was not true. Like, we wanted that statement. We never got an apology, but at least they said we didn't do anything wrong.
And saying that, I know some inside people in Project Montreal who told me the plan was to basically make life so unbearable for you that you would resign. Yeah. They would replace you in a by-election, and then it'd be all done for the next election, right? And grace to you and your courage and your stamina, you know, who Sue Montgomery is, you stuck it out. And I think that was really important. And I think that, you know, you're pushing the needle, right? It's you might feel it was a loss, and I get that. I really do, that you lost so much in that process, but you did push the needle. Yeah. And I think that and I think Holden said something that was really true, is that you know, I push back against some of the negative behavior online, and Holden says, well, you know, that is what it is, and we have to grow up and, you know, kind of come to terms with it. And he's right. Like, I've come to terms a lot now with, you know, the social media. I just say it's not about me; it's about them, right? And then the other thing I've learned to do is, I used to get really upset about like municipal, like the municipal level. It really used to infuriate me. And now I just like, I try to laugh at it, you know, because if I don't, I think it's like. And it keeps me sane. You know what I'm saying? Because if I didn't do that, I would either kill myself or kill somebody else, right? So that's where I'm at right now. And I really, you know, Sue, and I mean this sincerely, I really do believe there's a future for you in fighting for the community and helping us move forward. And I think that, you know, they say that these things give you strength, right? Like you go.
Yeah, I know to make you stronger, but I was already strong enough. Thank you.
Fair enough. But now you know the game, right? Now you know what's going to happen. Like, you're smarter. And we learn every day, right?
There's a lot of opportunity to still take your story and run with it. And honestly, a better way, because you're not tied up in an election, where I think that also...
You're free now.
Like, unfortunately for you at the time, let's be real, if an actual active candidate is fighting against the party, like, it's a lot harder to take you seriously in that moment than to after the fact, when the dust is settled and everyone's had time to think about it more pragmatically, plus get a broader perspective. Like, where the internet is extremely guilty is judge first, research later. And we all need to be better at that, and we're fucking god awful at it. So in that regard, fine, we really need to do better in that area. But with that, now that the dust is settled, I mean, you're in the easiest era ever to use content marketing to make your point. And you have a story that's powerful, and you're a compelling speaker. So the way you tell your story, it's good. You can tell you're a writer. So, like, there's a lot of potential to leverage it. Like, you could even make your own podcast and things like that.
What end?
To galvanize the people.
I can think of many ends. So we'll have another conversation.
I mean, we could talk about capitalism, or we could talk about social justice. I could take you down both routes and then tie them together.
Thank you. And Holden, that was really well said. And I think you know, I think we should, you know, tie things up, because it's been a long show, and I want to say to
Alex gets cranky if we get past 2 hours. He gets real hungry.
And it's right. I get hangry. I just own that now, right? I want to say to you sincerely, thank you so much for joining us and talking to us. I know it took you an enormous amount of courage, and, you know, you went through that bullshit, and I talk about it. It's not easy. I get it. And, you know, Holden and I, along with you, we're trying to build something here, and build like a community platform where people start talking about community issues, because I think it's important. People need to start talking about the community, what's important to them, how we're being managed, how we're being governed. I think these are important questions, and we need to ask ourselves constantly. It's a never-ending conversation. And I really hope that Sue, that you continue to be engaged in the community. I know it may be tough. I will be reaching out to you and inviting to you events if you're open to that. And
So if you really need help approaching this from a content point of view, I got you. I mean, in the past, I was like trying to be more neutral, but what you went through is a big situation, and
I got you too.
There's like options to take your story and leverage it as a tool, because what people often lack is proof of corruption. That's so clear and cut and definable.
Well, I don't know if do I have proof of it? Not really, but
I mean, when you describe the story of what you went through, if I were to take out a city official
it's convincing.
and I were to replace it with director of marketing for a software company, and you told the same story, all those dudes are in big trouble with the reggie.
Yeah, they wouldn't be working
all of them
anymore.
are. Like that's
They'd
like
be
a
gone.
serious. You would have gotten such a payout when you brought that to HR, and like that's how it would have gone down in corporate America, because we've recognized that
HR wasn't even on my side. Like they wouldn't even.
This is where
That's
story
part of the problem.
is like we're going.
That's part of the problem.
Actually, it's pretty wild that the same like the government is acting so foul, when if you tried to do that as a private company, you'd be fucked. So why is the government above reproach? Anytime you start using words like that, come on, that's when you really start to get the people in, and like we really point out that this is like mob-like behavior.
Yeah, it was a mob. It was a mob.
Not to imply anything about the actual mob who lives in the neighborhood I live in, but it's mob-like behavior.
Okay, virtual hug, and I want to end this. If I would have this pleasure to end this Zoom meeting. End it by saying that I am with Sue Montgomery. I'm here with Holden. Sue Montgomery was vindicated by the courts and was paid damages by the city of Montreal. And the city of Montreal admitted that they had no grounds to make the accusations they made against her. And I want to wish everybody Merry Christmas. Happy
Before
New
that, we
Year.
got to actually thank all the people that are here live with us.
Yes, thank you
like
so much.
I know we hit over 20 people across platforms at one point watching this. We got a lot of comments, and
more than the debates.
At least 8 people said I stand with Sue. So there you go. At least 8
and
people.
Don't worry, Sue.
Care.
Don't worry, Sue. Don't worry, Sue. You will be
60,000 to go.
You will be back.
You
will be back.
It starts off with the beginning.
And don't forget that I take the juicy clips of this and I post it, and they really get a lot of traction.
Also, anyone else out there that want to clip this, feel free. Let me know if you want to be our official show clipper, because I'm telling you, I don't got the time to do that follow-up stuff, or all of my podcasts would be more famous. So if you want to get involved like that and help us out, let us know, because we do want this to be a community show. And later on when there's money, we can have that conversation. But really, what's important is that you hit that subscribe button, that you hit that like button. I saw 16 shares on Alex's Facebook video, so share this with your people, because you have the power. Tag your journalists, tag people that should be covering this, like show the news outlets.
Yeah, where's the
news outlets, you have our full permission to clip this podcast. You
anything you want.
Ask. Clip that, air it, run it. Apparently that's a thing I'll do. So
Christmas tree.
I'm just saying, like, share it with the people, because we need you to make this a community show. If you want to be a guest on the show and talk about stuff like parks, like apparently park grass is an issue, or other stuff that's out there that personally I would never be as passionate about, come through, because we really want to understand the issues, so that when people ask questions like how can you make NDG better, we can start to have an actual conversation beyond just whining on the internet, which that's not going to make nothing better. Change.org is useless. So just keeping all that in mind, thank you again for coming, because without having the people viewing this, it's kind of us just talking to a vacuum, and watching the numbers go up each week is pretty encouraging. So share your friends. We'll be back next Tuesday, 6 p.m. for the stream. It's on YouTube too. It'll be on Spotify and everything. Like, this conversation should be on Spotify by tomorrow. Take care, everyone. We appreciate you all. Thank you so much, Sue, for coming and giving us your time and sharing your truth with us. It means a whole lot.
Yeah.
And,
you'll be
tell my story.
You'll be back, Sue. You're gonna come back, right?
anytime.
I'm not doing anything else.
Fantastic. She said yes. You heard that? She said yes. That's a yes.
She did.
My books,
She'll
that's
be
a yes.
back.
I'm writing that down.
And yeah, appreciate all y'all again. Have a wonderful evening, and May 20th.